This is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7, the smaller, significantly less expensive counterpart to the Galaxy Z Fold 7 that we recently reviewed. The Flip is quite similar in that its screen folds and unfolds, but the actual experience is very different. This really is a flip phone. Unlike the Fold 7, which is like a normal slab phone that transforms into a mini tablet, the Flip 7 is like half a smartphone that unfolds into a normal-sized phone. The exterior cover display is very impressive and really gives the device a modern, sleek appearance, but it's the very tall, unfolding interior screen that you're going to find yourself using most regularly. And it's all pretty dang neat. I mean, just opening it, closing it, this is just magical, but is the gimmick enough for the Flip to be truly worth buying? Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I'm very excited today to take a look at the Galaxy Z Flip 7, an incredibly cool phone, but one that doesn't come cheap. Starting at $1,100 US for the 256 gig model, which is what Samsung sent me to review here. I've had the last couple weeks to run this phone through its paces before I need to return it. I even took it with me camping in Alberta for a weekend, which was pretty fun, and that word right here describes this phone in a nutshell. It is fun. But is it fun enough to be worth over $1,000? Let's go ahead and get this started with a quick unboxing and my initial impressions, and then we'll get into a closer look at the phone itself, and hopefully determine whether or not the Flip 7 might be a good buy for you. Given we just reviewed the Fold 7, going into this video I was very curious how the Flip 7 would stack up. I really loved the Fold. It felt like the future, and having a mini tablet in your pocket at all times was a really unique experience that had me finally feeling like I understood why someone might spend $2,000 for a folding phone, even if I'm still personally happy enough on the iPhone side. But maybe, just maybe, the Flip 7 is actually the phone I've always wanted and just never realized. I mean, stranger things have happened. Let's blow through this unboxing right away here. The box itself has a nice minimalist design, and opening it up, we immediately find the Flip 7 unfolded face down with a sticker warning us that this is a purely confidential product. I'm gonna just ignore that and hope I don't get sued. Somehow I think I'll be okay. And lifting the phone out of the box, we can peel off the protective coverings to get a good look at the device. I go ahead and turn it on, and right away both the interior and exterior displays light up at the same time, which is cool. The Flip 7 is thin, but not as thin as I expected coming off the Fold 7, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. That phone was insanely thin, but folded up, the Flip is a bit more bulky than your average smartphone, though the physical footprint is of course quite a bit smaller. The crease in the screen there is very much visible when the light catches it or if you're looking at the phone from an off angle, but when actually using the Flip, looking at it dead on, it's practically invisible just like the Fold 7. Once the phone booted up, it was almost dead, so I needed to give it a quick charge before getting things set up. The setup was simple enough. One thing I did want to mention was the disclaimer about how the display here isn't dust resistant and that you need to be careful with it, which I think is a really smart inclusion to have this for new users. You definitely would want to be careful with this phone, just like with the Fold 7. While these screens have no doubt gotten far better over the years, they're never going to be as solid or reliable as a normal glass display on a regular slab phone. It's just the compromise needed to have that folding gimmick, or maybe flipping gimmick in this case, I suppose. But here we are, the Flip 7 with a fresh install of Android 16 and One UI 8.0. And I've got plenty of thoughts on how this phone functions. Initially, I found that the cover display was the most impressive part of this phone. It looks so clean and modern with those ultra slim bezels, with only the cameras protruding from the display, cut out in a way that it almost all looks so natural despite this being a very strange screen when you think about it. It did feel a little odd initially that the cameras are on the bottom of the screen just because I'm used to them being at the top, but what we'll find later on is that I didn't actually find myself using this outside display very often. When pulling the phone out of my pocket, I would almost immediately instinctively just open it up. I wouldn't even bother glancing at the exterior screen, and the main screen does function identically to any regular slab smartphone, which is kind of nice. With the Fold 7, certain apps and parts of Android behaved a bit oddly at times, since that phone was basically a tablet, so there was a little bit of jank or inconsistencies within the software that won't be here because this operates like any other phone. However, we do instead get some new issues that are presented with the cover display, and most of it I think comes down to how useful that exterior screen actually is. While it is possible to run apps on it, which is probably not something you're going to want to do because why would you, really the main utility here comes in an easily accessible clock, widgets, your notifications, maybe you could shoot off a quick reply here and there to a text, but I found this to be sort of similar to like an Apple Watch in terms of how I used it. Whenever I wanted to actually get something done, I was gonna open up the phone. but that's all totally fine, and I wouldn't hold it against this device, even if I think some of this software might be a bit undercooked still. Still, the big headline for me using this phone right off the bat is that the Flip 7 is really fun. It feels like this unique, fresh experience, and while the Fold 7 was definitely a device I would prefer to have for a multitude of reasons, it also would cost me about double the price of the Flip. And if you were to rock this as your main driver, you would certainly stand out from the crowd. There is a lot to love here, but it's not so cut and dry that I can easily recommend buying this phone. At $1,100 the phone's not going to be worth it for the vast majority of users out there, but that's not exactly a bold or surprising conclusion to reach. This is like a feature phone, a device with a critical gimmick that the rest of the experience revolves around. And you buy it because you want that gimmick, not because you want the best overall smartphone for the price point. The Flip 7 FE is already available as well, starting at $900, but I mean, if you're going to go out of your way to get a phone like this, I say go big or go home and get the better Flip 7. It's actually, in my opinion, much better value, with not only a far sleeker cover display and better specs, but it also comes with 256 gigs at that $1,100 versus 128 and $900 for the FE, although when I was looking, the 256 gig version was also discounted, but I don't really care. The Flip 7 seems like a far better phone for not a whole lot more money. It's a bit of a no-brainer, get the Flip 7, not the FE. The other main competition for this phone probably comes from the Motorola Razr, which I would forgive you for mistaking it for the Flip 7, to be honest. They look really darn similar. I think going with Samsung is probably the best option for most people, especially if you're already a Samsung user anyways, but mind you, I haven't actually used the Razr myself, so it's gonna come down to personal preference for which one you want. Assuming you want a phone like this, a flip phone, because that's what this is. So that's the main answer for this video out of the way. The Flip 7 is worth it if you've got the cash, and do you want it? Just keep in mind you're paying a premium for this gimmicky phone. A really cool gimmicky phone, but one that sits a tier below Samsung's best flagships, as it has mostly equivalent specs to the S25 and S25 Plus, whereas the Fold 7 had the specs of the S25 Ultra. We're missing the third telephoto camera lens here, the specs aren't quite as impressive on the Flip as like the Fold or something, but we'll get to that in a bit. For now, let's back up here and take a closer look at the phone that I have here in my hand, the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7 in all of its blue glory. The first thing that strikes me with the design of the Galaxy Z Flip 7 is that vibrant blue color, the same as was on the Fold 7 we looked at. The blue aluminum frame and glass backing really just look and feel so premium and fresh, really standing out from the crowd of white, black, and gray smartphones, including my own iPhone in natural titanium. Past the blue shadow color, you've also got jet black, coral red, and mint, the last of which is a Samsung.com exclusive, so there's a decent bit of variety here to choose from. And man, this phone with that colorful build and thin bezeled cover display is just gorgeous. The bezels on that 4.1-inch 120Hz sharp AMOLED screen are incredibly slim, and the high refresh rate has everything you do on here feeling buttery smooth. Of course, this brings up the problem that there's really not a whole lot to do on this screen, but we'll table that discussion for a bit later in the video. What I love is how this all looks, and how the cameras just kind of seamlessly cut into the screen. It did feel a little odd to me initially that the camera lenses are at the bottom corner here. I think we've been trained by smartphones over the years to expect cameras to always be near the top, but when you're using this cover display as a screen to take selfies, which is pretty cool, you can flip it around any way you want, and it's almost surprisingly responsive in switching orientation. But this is how you're going to want to hold it most of the time to allow for ease of flipping the phone open. And in doing so, we get to the main event, that oh so tall 6.9-inch 120Hz 1080p flexible AMOLED display. The aspect ratio is 21:9, which feels significantly taller than the typical 19.5:9 aspect ratio you would see on most slab phones, but again, this does make sense. You might as well get a bit more height out of this phone considering how little space it takes up in the pocket. The crease in the center of the display here is fairly subtle, again when you're looking at the phone dead on, but pretty obvious at any other angle. The bezels are, I guess, a little on the thick side compared to most modern smartphones. I mean, they're still fairly thin realistically speaking, but it's all relative. They're also raised a bit above the screen, so you can feel it with your finger. There's also a couple bumps on either side of the phone where the hinge sort of sticks out. The crease on the Flip is far more noticeable to me than it was on the Fold 7. Because unfolded, this thing is much smaller, and the crease goes horizontally across the center. You're frequently running your finger over it as you scroll and just generally use the phone. Not really a problem, and something I got used to very quickly, but it's not as seamless as a slab smartphone, even if it functions the same way. This screen also just doesn't feel as good to use as a normal glass display. There's almost a more plasticky feel here that comes with this flexible screen. We saw that disclaimer in the setup earlier, the phone's water resistant but not dust resistant, and you'd want to make sure you're keeping the display fairly clean and clear of debris before snapping the phone shut. It really feels like it would be pretty easy to scratch this thing up, and you can actually see the included plastic screen protector that you're not supposed to remove right near the edges of the phone. Still, the display functions just as well as any other screen out there, even if it's not going to be as durable. The fingerprint reader here, it's fine. It's on the power button. It works well enough. It's quick, consistent from my testing for the most part. When it came to actually unlocking the phone, I found I needed to make a bit of an adjustment just to remember to always keep my finger or thumb on that sensor when you open the phone. I would prefer something like Apple's Face ID here, which just doesn't require you to put your finger anywhere. It just works. We do have a facial recognition option, but I don't really recommend using it since it's not going to be too secure, and it may not work that well in lower light as it's just using the camera to view your face. Ultimately, the fingerprint reader is fine, and the longer I've used the phone, the better I've gotten at instinctively sticking my thumb on the reader as I open the device. It's not something I'm concerned about, but when you're spending this much money on a phone, you do want the experience to feel nearly perfect. And I do think the Flip 7, even with some compromise, absolutely excels and shows its best qualities in the design and display department. We'll be discussing what it's like to actually use this phone, especially that exterior display, but first, let's move into the specs of the Flip 7. Powered by the Exynos 2500 chipset and 12GB of RAM, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 isn't lacking in the performance department, though this chip is generally considered inferior to the Snapdragon 8 Elite chip in the S25 Ultra and Fold 7, as well as the regular S25 and S25 Plus. This phone is still very much fast right now, don't get me wrong, and will remain that way for many years to come, currently running Samsung's One UI 8 over top Android 16, with a guaranteed 7 years of software support, just like on the Fold 7. This means potentially a very long life for those using this device, assuming the hardware and particularly the battery life can keep up as the years pass by. We've got a 4300 mAh battery in here with 15-watt wireless charging and up to 25-watt charging via USB-C, so it charges quick enough with the right adapter, which is nice because the battery's not bad, but it's also not exactly Red Magic 10 Pro tier, if you catch my drift. Again, it's not bad, it's just kind of good enough from what I've seen in my own usage as well as other reviewers online. After a few years of usage, with the battery health degrading, you might find the experience worsening dramatically, but this is a problem common in any smartphone without an easily swappable battery, and there is some battery optimization stuff you can do to help out. I did find that the Flip 7 warmed up pretty quickly when just taking photos and video. The Fold 7 did the same thing too, and it's not uncomfortably hot or anything in the hand, probably wouldn't even be noticeable once you slap a case on here. And it was kind of fun to play around with the camera on the Flip 7. You can take advantage of that cover display to take high quality selfies with the main camera, or you can even unfold the phone halfway for this completely unnecessary but very fun camcorder setup. I'll be honest, I don't know why, but I really enjoyed holding the phone like this. It's the little things sometimes, you know? Let's talk about the photography here, an area where the Flip does lag behind compared to Samsung's more expensive flagships. The interior selfie camera is fine enough, it's 10 megapixels and produced very similar results to the front-facing cameras on the Fold 7, but of course, like with the Fold 7, the really fun gimmick here is actually using the cover display and the main 50 megapixel camera for your selfies, or perhaps instead the 0.6 times zoom 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. And yeah, of course, the selfies from the main camera are far superior to those from the interior selfie cam. That one is going to be much more useful for things like video calls or any situation where you need the phone unfolded while it's in use. Otherwise, stick to the outside cameras for sure. But photos from those rear-facing lenses, I found most results were pretty solid, as you would expect, this being the same camera as what's on the S25 and S25 Plus. We are missing the telephoto zoom lens option, which does sting a bit, but I think having wide and ultra-wide still offers a decent bit of versatility. You just won't be retaining a whole lot of detail if you take a picture that's zoomed in any further than 1 or 2x. The 200 megapixel main sensor from the S25 Ultra and Fold 7 would have been nice here, but we need to choose our battles, I guess. You're gonna pay a premium for the form factor on this phone, so there's inevitably going to be concessions. Plus, the Flip 7 starts at $200 cheaper than the S25 Ultra anyways. So I'd rate the camera here as good enough. I got some really nice pictures, and I thought it did a good job in basically any situation. If you're buying the Flip 7, you're not buying it for the cameras. The important thing is the photography is good enough that there's no reason to actively avoid purchasing this phone. The Flip 7 doesn't have the best specs available, but they're absolutely on the high end of the market. The Snapdragon 8 Elite chip would have been nice, as would have a third camera lens or the 200 megapixel sensor, but honestly, considering how much these two camera sensors already cut into this exterior display, having a more minimal setup makes more sense. I don't know if they reasonably could fit a third camera lens here. And all in all, what we have here is plenty enough to get the job done with consistently spiffy performance in any task we throw at the phone. All in a package that is a lot of fun to use. So let's touch on the user experience, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this video up. So I've been using the Flip 7 for a couple weeks now, and writing the conclusion to this video was definitely the hardest part of making this entire review. I found myself a bit torn. On one hand, as I've said over and over throughout this video, this phone is really fun. I love bringing it out and about and showing it off to friends and family. It always gets a reaction from that magically folding display, and there's this underlying nostalgia to having a flip phone that can't be ignored. If this does all really seem cool to you and you want the Flip, I'd say go for it. But there's not enough here to convince me that this is the right kind of device for me personally, nor the right for most people. If you're on the fence at all, I really don't know why you would buy the Flip 7. It brings a good few compromises in photography and hardware that you just don't see on other phones at the same price, and all you're really gaining out of it is the flipping gimmick and cover screen. And as said earlier, the cover screen's functionality does feel a bit underwhelming. There's some nice customization options, but it doesn't actually do a whole lot. It really is like a glorified Apple Watch or something. You can set it up to actually run apps through the Labs page in settings, and there's only a few apps that work by default, including YouTube of all things, which is definitely something you would want to do on here. Actually, quick side note, one thing about having the phone be this tall is the hole punch notch doesn't cut into 2x1 video content. I do like that. If you do decide to watch YouTube on the outside screen, the cameras on the cover didn't cut into video either, but probably not going to be doing much YouTube watching on this screen anyways. For unsupported apps, you can install something off the Galaxy Store to run them on the cover screen, so naturally I had to give Clash of Clans a shot, and it was pretty good until I got to a point where I couldn't proceed due to the cameras covering the button I'm supposed to press. Oops. Obviously, these are kind of jokey examples, and I do think there are some apps that at least would be kind of neat on the cover screen, but as it stands right now, I think you'll find yourself opening the phone up to do basically anything of substance, even in cases where maybe you don't actually need to. And if you're almost always ignoring that outside display, as I found myself doing, just opening the phone immediately, it does beg the question of whether it might be better for you to just use a regular slab smartphone in the first place, one with a more straightforward display and build that isn't going to be prone to the same issues in durability. I made a real effort to be careful with this phone, which did get a little tiring, and I always tried to remember to make sure there was no debris or anything whenever I closed it. But there is a small little scratch visible here. You can see it in the light. Whether this was me or not, this is going to be the kind of typical wear and tear on a phone like this, and if you buy one, I would be prepared for some cosmetic flaws to come sooner rather than later. Not a big deal so long as the phone still functions properly, but it is worth mentioning. It's just not something I'd ever really have to worry or think about on my iPhone. At the end of the day, what we have here is a flip phone that is far too entertaining to fidget with, and also just so happens to work like any other smartphone. It is great to have a device this big in such a compact form factor. It would hardly take up any room in your pocket or purse or wherever else, and that cover screen looks so unbelievably amazing. It's extraordinary, honestly. But it's also just not that useful, and I think the software probably has some catching up to do with the hardware. And of course, once the phone is opened up, it's the same as any other smartphone, and that's the big reason why I wouldn't really recommend buying this phone. It is fun, but it's not that practical or necessary, it's just fun. And you know what? In the current smartphone climate, I do think that's more than enough reason to go out of your way to buy a phone like the Galaxy Z Flip 7 if you really want to, and I did enjoy my time with the phone over the past couple weeks, even if it's not a phone I personally would purchase for myself. So with that, I think I'm right about done here. Hopefully you found this video interesting or helpful, and if so, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more tech content. Huge shout out to the channel members, thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you all for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.